tower reached unto heaven. The people were of one mind and one language, and nothing was impossible to them. In the end, their tower was split, their language confused, and the nations divided. What exactly were they planning? Is it true they planned to overthrow the Most High? Was this tower some type of portal to heaven? And why was God determined to stop them? Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Echoes. Hope you guys have had a fantastic week. Tonight, we're going to be going through Genesis chapter 11, the whole narrative of the Tower of Babel. We have been through Nimrod. We've gone through all the sons of Noah. We spent about 5 weeks going through that. And so today, we're going to be going into Nimrod's kingdom and the tower that they built in Genesis chapter 11. My name is Bronson. My brother's name is Austin. And we are so excited that you guys were able to join us today. If you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button. If you are a returning viewer, thank you very much. We appreciate all of your support. Austin, bro, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Welcome, everybody. And thank you guys so much. We have passed, it may not sound like a lot, but we've passed 1,000 subs, guys. Hey. All right. Thank you guys for subbing and being a part of this community. And we're just really humbled by it. And we're really happy to bring you guys these commentaries on the Bible and the different shows that we do. And we just want to say thank you guys. Thank you very much for coming here and joining this community with us. And we've got a lot of big stuff coming for you guys. I know we've talked a little bit about the documentary we're filming. We filmed it this last week, and part of it, at least, we started getting a lot of good stuff in. We've got some big time interviews coming for you guys, and we're just excited to be here today. Happy 4th of July to all you guys here in the States and everybody else. We hope you've had a great week. And we've got a big show tonight. We're going to be covering the Tower of Babel and all the different theories about it, different opinions about it, different locations it could have been. And this is going to be a really in-depth episode, guys. So we're going to cover it all. And towards the end of it, we'll give our own opinions about it. But we want to just let the Bible speak for itself, let the ancient text speak for itself, and let some scholars speak for themselves. And we're going to kind of just lay that in you guys' hands. And you make your own decisions. We have our opinions, but we're not your teachers. We're not preachers. We are just guys that love to study, that love God, that love the Bible. And so we're going to take it and show you guys all the different opinions, all the best opinions in our opinion. I know that's a lot of opinions, but we're going to just kind of lay that in you guys' hands. And we'll give our opinions at the end, but we just want to lay it out there, guys, so you guys can make the decision for yourself. And that's what we try to do, show every side of the story that has some validity to it, show you the biblical references, and you guys make the decision. Bronson, you ready to get into this tonight, man?
Man, I'm so ready to do this thing. Let's go ahead and hook up the screen share and get it going.
I can't believe we made it through Genesis 10. I didn't think we were ever going to get through there, man.
But man, this
fun doing it. It was really good. I had fun doing it.
Me too.
That Canaanites video, I really enjoyed that one, man. That was some good in-depth investigation we were able to do into that.
It was a lot of fun, man. It's been a major blessing, a lot of edification and good knowledge coming out of that. So we appreciate everybody who enjoyed it with us. So tonight, man, we're getting into Genesis 11. When we do this, we're going to look at this and we're going to speak to our audience as if you guys have been doing this for 50 years or as if you've been doing this for 50 minutes. So we're going to break this down in the most basic way, as if you've never read this chapter before, and we're going to proceed to continue on to a more advanced conversation as the video progresses. So if you're new to this, stick around. If you've got a little bit of time involved in this type of stuff, there's stuff for you here too, I promise. So hang out with us. We're just going to cover the narrative and the story first. So starting off in Genesis 11, verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth.
All right, very nice, Bronson. Now, before we go too far, let's stop right there at Genesis 11:8. All right, right there it says, So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So that means they stopped building the city. Could we show that in the NLT, just so it's a little more plain language? Because it almost leads you to believe they left there to build another city, if you're reading it with the modern mindset. But looking at it in the NLT, it gives you a very clearly what it's saying there.
There we go. Verse 8, NLT. In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city of Babel.
Yeah, so sometimes in the King James Version, the way it's worded and the order it's worded in, it gets a little confusing if you're not used to it. Now, we grew up on it, so we get it, but sometimes it's better just to look at a modern translation if you get a little confused, especially if you're new to the Bible, talking about people maybe 50 minutes into it. Sometimes you need to, look at a more modern translation if you get a little bit confused. I know one of the people that I was talking to, he wasn't a Christian, wasn't ever really in church or anything. When he became a believer, what he did is he tried in the King James and he just could not get it. It was just the way it was worded, like here in 11:8, it was confusing for him. He didn't grow up with it, which is completely understandable. So if you're new to the Bible, I suggest if you're going to read all of Genesis, read it all in the NLT, then go back in the King James. The King James has all the verses in it. Nothing's been taken out. And I believe it's a superior translation to the NLT or the NIV or the ESV. So I suggest you go and read it in the NLT, read it through the chapter, then come back in the KJV and read it again. That's the best way. That my best, advice. That's the same advice I gave him, and it worked really well for him. I think he's been through the Bible 3 or 4 times now, and that's how he did it the first time, was just reading the NLT, getting a good understanding of what's going on, then going back to the KJV. And I think he's only King James now. We're not just solely King James, but I believe that's one of the better translations that we have. So so if you're new to the Bible, I suggest read it in the NLT. It'll give you, you may miss some things here or there that's in the KJV, but it'll give you a good understanding with modern day language.
Wow, good advice, man. Thank you very much. I do enjoy me a good KJV. So let's take a look at some of this information here we get in Genesis 11, and let's just kind of dissect it a little bit and take a look at some things. So when we saw that they got off of the mountain of Ararat with the Ark and Noah, they were divided into the 3 sections of the world between Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And at one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. So there may be a little bit of a space of time in between the separation of the 3 families until now. I'm not entirely too sure. But the people began to migrate to the east, and they found a land in Babylonia and settled there.
Well, now, that's according to NLT. Now, in the KJV, this is what I mean by reading it first and going back to the KJV. Let's go ahead and go back to the KJV, because there it's in the land of Shinar.
Yes.
Which a lot of people say is just Babylon, but that's debatable, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit.
Absolutely. So here we are back into the KJV, and it says they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And so this would be in the inheritance of the land of Shem. You agree?
Yes.
Yes. So they say to each other, let's make some brick, let's burn them, we're going to put some slime together, let's build a city. And their goal here seems to be, we want to make a city whose top reaches unto heaven, and we want to make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth.
All right, but let's look at the definitions here, and let's look at the definition for heaven.
Sure. Again, if you guys are unfamiliar, we're using a Strong's Concordance here. So this Strong's Concordance, we go over to heaven. The original word from the manuscript in which the KJV was translated from is Shemayim. Shemayim. So this comes down, and our definitions we hear in the outline of biblical usage is heavens, sky, the visible heavens or sky, as the abode of the stars. Very cool. As the visible universe, the sky, atmosphere.
And guys, when it's talking about stars in the Old Testament, that's angels. And we've covered that a lot in our Genesis 1 commentary. It's a little bit rougher than what some of the newer videos are, just because we were just getting started. I believe that was like the second video we ever recorded. But there's a lot of good information in there, and we cover cosmology, creation, all that stuff in there. It's a long video, but there's a lot of good info in there. I suggest you guys check it out.
Yeah, it's a real good time, man. So down here in our lexicon, it says heavens, from the firmament, which seems to be spread out like a vault over the globe, as supported on foundations and columns. Very, very cool type of stuff here, man, is that they're building a city, a tower, and this isn't like a skyscraper, if you will. This is something that seems to be as if they're trying to get it as high as physically possible, even up into the firmament. I suppose today is not the day to talk about the firmament. We've done it in other videos before, like Genesis 1 and 2, but that is quite a task. That is a big, big building, bro.
Yeah.
A major building. So what's crazy here is that the Lord comes down to see the city. And it's almost like he descends himself from heaven to take a little look-see at what these guys are doing here. You know, you got to be doing something to get the attention of God to get him to come down.
I think also, well, it's in my opinion, this is me thinking, thus thinketh Austin, not thus saith the Lord here. I think a lot of it was the location of where the tower was too. I think that had a lot to do with it, because the height they were building it at, and and a lot of people think it wasn't about height, so I won't ruin it too much, but it does seem that they were building it pretty high. So I think the height in conjunction with where it was at was probably a big deal to God.
I think you're right. We see a couple of examples in the Old Testament where this happens. The first initial one I suppose everybody thinks of is Jacob's ladder, when he wakes up from that vision, if you will, where he sees the ladder and he's wrestling and whatnot. He says, oh my gosh, I'm sleeping in the house of the Lord. And he names the place Peniel or whatever. We looked in last week's episode that David noticed that in that threshing floor he bought from Onan, that in that particular location, God's answering his prayers. And that location ends up becoming where Solomon builds the first temple of the Lord. So there's something going on with geographical locations and your connection to heavenly bodies, or thinning the veil in between your prayers. I'm speaking in my own language here now, but there's some type of precedence for that. So I think you're onto something there. The Lord said, behold, the people is one. They'll have one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they imagined to do. What are your thoughts?
Well, I believe it means exactly what it says, which is what you got to kind of look at the Bible at every time. Does it mean what it says? Yes, it means what it says. Unless you're getting a behold a parable, the Bible is pretty straightforward. I know a lot of people try to make it out like flowery poetic language, but that's not how this book is written. It's not written like epic poetry like Gilgamesh or the Odyssey or something like that. It's written like a narrative. So unless it's telling you something as a metaphor, or giving you, telling you it's a parable, or telling you it's symbolism for something else, typically it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. What it's saying here is nothing that they're imagining to do with building this tower is restraining them. They'll be able to accomplish their goals here, is what God is saying. And apparently the goals they were trying to accomplish weren't that great. And we're going to see that in the some extra biblical text when we get into it.
Nice.
Yeah, so right here in this next verse in 11:7, it says, go to, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Now, go to, who is that us there, Bronson?
Man, I don't know. It's one of them things where the first time I read it, I was confused myself. I had taken everything I'd ever been taught and threw it out the window. Was just taking what the Bible said, and here I am, 11 chapters in, and I'm like, who is us? Is this him speaking? Is this the conversation between Father, Son, Holy Spirit? Is this the Father speaking to certain angels?
Well, that first one is what I always thought was like it was the Godhead talking amongst itself, which it could be, but we do have some extra biblical texts that say otherwise, and we're going to get into that in here in a little bit too. So keep this us in your mind, okay? Because this passage here and a few others that we're going to cover tonight really gets flipped on its head and turned against Christians, basically just because like the Bible says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, and it's just because we weren't taught this in church. I was in Christian school and been to all kinds of different denominations and stuff, and I was never taught the things that what this is referencing here. So keep this in your mind, guys. If you don't know who this us is, we're going to cover that in depth coming up. So put a little marker in your mind for that.
Thank you. Down here in verse 8, the Lord scatters them abroad the whole face of the earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, the name of it is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence the Lord did scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth.
Let me ask you this, Bronson, just a little side note. Where's the face of a ball?
Oh, I don't know. You have to squish it to get one, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
just flat, isn't it?
Just a little side note. Okay, so after this, we get into the descendants of Shem, and we've decided we're going to just put that into an Abraham video because we have done genealogy after genealogy after genealogy and covered most of the people in this genealogy in depth. Yeah. So if you're interested in the genealogies, please go back to the curse of Canaan and the sons of Japheth, the sons of Ham, and the sons of Shem. We go through all of that. It's super in depth, but the best we can. A lot of it's speculation because we're thousands of years away from that. So we just did the best we can with it, but we tried to pull from as many sources as we could that were reputable, pulled from some commentaries by godly men, and try to give you guys the best answers on who they were, where did they go to, and sometimes the answers aren't super great, just to be honest with you guys, but we're honest about it. We don't try and fluff it up and tell you something that's not, but go back and check those out if you're interested in the genealogies, because we definitely go into it. All right, so let's go ahead and we got a little clip for you guys just to kind of give you an icebreaker and show you a little bit what we're going to be talking about first. And this is from the Science Channel, just a little teaser here. And just give you some visuals of this area in Babylon. If you guys aren't familiar with it or haven't ever seen video of it, this would be cool for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and check it out.
All right, man. Quick sound check.
Dig into what he's saying a little bit. Let's go back to Genesis.
Sure.
And he's saying that Babel means Babylon, which I disagree with because Babel, the definition of Babel is not Babylon. They equate it to meaning Babylon, but the actual meaning is confusion. Okay? Confusion. Now they use Babel and Babylon interchangeably, but if you go down just a little bit, so right here in the Strongs, all right, right there, that first sentence, proper name of Babel, comma Babylon, in Assyrian written as Babalu, which means gate of the god, gate of God. Okay? So what they're doing here is the ancient Hebrews would play with language a lot. For example, Nimrod means to rebel, but his name was not actually Nimrod. They changed the language up to convey what they were trying to get across, what kind of idea they were trying to get across. And if you've watched our earlier videos, you know that you have the definition, you almost have like what they're trying to convey is a second or third definition down. And that's like that a lot in ancient Hebrew. So you just got to understand what you're looking at. The original name here was Babalu, and they wrote it as Babel because that's where the languages were confused. It was very close to the name, but it also conveyed the idea, which what they were trying to portray. Okay, so the actual name is Babelu, okay, which means gate of the god, but they changed the name to Babel to convey that the languages were confused there. Bronson, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we see it all over the place in Akeldama, the field of blood. You know, we see that name change in the Bible.
Right.
Golgotha, the place of a skull, we hear that called Calvary. These
Right.
places change often, even in modern day, when we try to add a connotation to the word, add some ambiance and a feel to it. So it happens, and we see it happen in the Bible. You know, so
Especially when you're looking to the names of tribes and patriarchs. A lot of times, sometimes the name is given that way to convey a thought, and then sometimes the language is changed just a little bit to get across what they're trying to get across.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. Now, another thing that they seem to be, and then I'm just assuming, I don't want to, give it as if it's a true thing, is they're holding true to this circular shape. And I'd be interested to know if we have any people in our audience that are engineers or in the engineering field. If you were to build a massive tower and you knew it was going to reach up to, in their understanding, I'm not putting this on anybody else, but in their understanding, there would have been a firmament, a ceiling up there. And so they would have had to have known perhaps maybe the measurement between where they were building up until where the firmament would have been. What shape would you have built that tower? Would you have gone with a circular shape, maybe something like a pyramid, something more square or cylindrical? Just curious to think about that, because we often see that wedding cake shape and we sort of hold to it because it's a picture we've seen since we were often children. So I think it's safe to challenge that. I mean, what if it was a pyramid? I don't know, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. But all in all, great video. What he's saying is that the Tower of Babel was located in Babylon. You see him pulling right up to that gate of Ishtar.
Right, and that's the common thought. Okay, and that's what I know. I was raised to think that, hey, it was in Babylon, but we have some dissenting opinions on that. A few of them actually. There's a lot more than what we're going to show tonight, but we just pulled from the best ones, the ones that seem to have the most scholarship and reasoning behind it, and have some historical, validity. Okay, because there's all kinds of craziness out there, guys. So. Yeah, we're just going to try and show you the best ones we can tonight. We're going to get into all that. We got several clips coming up. Just hang in there with us. We're going to go through these extra biblical texts. And Bronson, you want to start right here, and let's get a little more coloring into this story of the Tower of Babel. Now, where are we at here, sir? Just so everybody can kind of follow along.
So we are in the book of Jubilees, and we're looking somewhere around chapter 9. This is titled The Tower of Babel and the Confusion of Tongues. When I say somewhere around chapter 9, you'll see that this starts in verse 18. So some places you go, they might call it chapter 8, and some people might be in chapter 10, because some people just have it in different places. So we're starting in verse 18, which would be the first verse of this given section of the portion of the text.
And this is the R.H. Charles version, correct?
As far as I understand, yes. I believe that most of your sacred text is R.H. Charles, and that is the man that would have translated this over into the language that we're reading it in today. So we'll skim through this first portion here. Peleg took to himself a wife. Her name was Lamna, the daughter of Shinar, and she bare him in the 4th year of this week, and she called his name Ru. They say, behold, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purpose of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. For they departed from the land of Ararat, that's the mountain that the ark landed on, eastward to Shinar. For in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, go to, let us ascend thereby into heaven. So this is more than just building a city that reaches heaven. They're wanting to ascend thereby into heaven. So by the use of the tower, we will ascend into heaven.
They will ascend into heaven. Okay, so it's not just the tower reaching to the heavens, like reaching to the skies. No, they're trying to ascend into Shemayim, the heaven, the heavens, the third heaven.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
What a task, man. And verse 20, they began to build, and in the 4th week they made brick with fire, and the brick served them for stone. And clay with which they cemented them together was asphalt, which cometh out of the sea, and out of the fountains of the water in the land of Shinar. And they built it. 43 years they were building this thing. 43 years, golly. The breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of a brick was the third of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 cubits and 2 palms. The extent of one wall was 13 stades, and the other 30 stades. And the Lord our God said unto us.
All right, hold on one second. Guys, we just gave you a bunch of measurements there, and I realize it's in old measurements, and you may not understand what those measurements are. We have a graph that we're going to show a little bit later on that's going to compare it in feet to modern buildings that we have today. So if you're confused on the measurements or think things like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but just hold on for just a little bit, guys. We're going to show you a full graph and exactly what it is.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because even when I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, what's a stade? I don't know what that is. What's 2 palms? Right. Is that your hand? I don't. All right. So the Lord said unto us. Again, that word us there makes you beg the question, who is writing this from whose perspective?
Right.
Said unto us, behold, they are one people, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be withholden from them. Go to, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. And they may be dispersed into cities and nations. And one purpose will no longer abide with them to the day of judgment.
All right, hold on one second there. So one purpose, when is the day of judgment? That's at the very end, right?
That's like the last day, yeah.
Right before new heavens and new earth, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one purpose will not abide them until the day of judgment. So that day must be the day that they come together to try to make war with the Most High. They're at the end of days.
I agree.
So what they'll be doing at the end of days with the Antichrist, the beast, the false prophet, and all that, actually, I guess that's when Satan's released, correct? What they'll be doing then is in the same vein of what they're doing here, okay?
Pretty wild, man.
And we're going to get into a little more of the mindset in the next text we get into. So
that's quite a prophecy that Jubilee is putting forth.
Right.
And the Lord descended, and we descended with him to the city, and the tower which the children of men had built. And he confounded their language, and they no longer understood one another's language, and they ceased then to build the city and the tower. I wanted to take a second when it says, and we descended with him.
I wonder if that would be Noah, because I know a lot of people attribute some of this to Noah. So I wonder if it would be Noah and Shem and the righteous families that that did not partake in this. If they were there and descended and saw this happening, it makes you wonder. I don't have a good answer on. I just know conjecture from other people on this, but that would be, from what I understand, who this would be Noah, Shem, and the righteous families that did not take part in this building of the tower.
I'll throw this idea out there and do with it what you please. Call me silly or call me smart. I don't care. When you look at Stephen and his dialogue that he presents towards the Pharisees before he dies, and even some of the writings of Paul, it is the dissertation given from angels. You see that given a lot, that the law was received by the words of angels. And that is in the King James Version. I'm just going to leave that there. I understand that Moses was hanging out with God face to face. I understand all of that. And there is that where the Ten Commandments with Moses and God was a 1v1 type of one-on-one scenario. But you do see that in the Bible, there is some type of verbiage being used by Stephen and by Paul in later writings, that some of this was given by the mouth of angels. And I'm just going to leave that there.
And when you get to Revelation, you also have an angel shoving a scroll in John's mouth. It was sweet like honey, and it became bitter. So they had the words were imparted onto John through an angel in that manner as well. So that's not without precedence.
Good addition there. I didn't think about that. Very good addition. All right, so here we go. For this reason, the whole land of Shinar is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound all the language of the children of men. From thence they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. And the Lord sent a mighty wind against the tower and overthrew it upon the earth. And behold, it was between Asher. Now, if you've watched our genealogy videos, Asher is Assyria, and Babylon in the land of Shinar. And they call its name Overthrow. In the 4th week, in the 1st year, in the beginning thereof, in the 34th Jubilee, they were dispersed from the land of Shinar.
All right, well, let's go to a map real quick, and let's see, in between Asher and Babylon. I think we have an ancient map.
Sure do.
That we can kind of get an idea of where this is. All right, so if you look, you have Babylon down there in the south, okay, in the green area, and then you have Asher right there. So what the Jubilees is saying, it's somewhere in between Asher and Babylon. Okay, so somewhere in that area. Today, it seems that modern Baghdad is there. If you saw in the definition when we pulled up Babel, it said in Hilah, which is where that in that clip we showed the Ishtar Gate and what they say is the ruins of the tower or the foundation. It's really just ruins, and that's where they say it is right there in that area. And according to Jubilees, it was in this area between Asher and Babylon. If what they say is Babylon, because Babylon changed names. It was interchangeable between cities. And we're going to see that, and we're going to prove that out as we go tonight. So just in the mainstream thinking, this is where Babylon is. And in between Asher and Babylon is where that tower would have been built. Okay?
Thank you very much. And that is according to the Book of Jubilee. So not much more I want to add on to this. We kind of gave our commentary as we went, but yeah. I did think this was really cool. Now, I'm no marine biologist or chemist or whatever, but when I read this, I was like, what? With asphalt cometh out of the sea, that is just bananas. And so, because it's not the Bible, it's one of the things when I read that, I was like, all right, we got to look into this. And it turns out this is actually like a thing that happens. And the most famous one is right here in the Dead Sea. I'll read this to you. This comes from Wikipedia and other places too. The unusual feature of the Dead Sea is its discharge of asphalt. From deep seeps, the Dead Sea constantly spits up small pebbles and blocks of the black substance. Asphalt-coated figurines and butadiene-coated Neolithic skulls from archaeological sites have been found. Egyptian mummification processes used asphalt imported from the Dead Sea region.
That's fascinating.
What's that?
That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, this isn't just the Dead Sea. We saw in Jubilees, it says it comes from springs out of where Babylon would have been. And I also found an area in the Gulf of Mexico where we found these massive road paved structures that are deep underwater. And so that was just kind of something interesting there. And like I said, it seems that it's not, exclusive to the Dead Sea, but it happens in other places in the world as well. And it comes from these seeps, S-E-E-P-S. I know I've got a Southern accent.
Oh, look at there. Yeah, there's a picture of it.
Look at that. Isn't that just crazy, man? So,
yeah, absolutely. And it does happen in other places. So it's not just a one-off at the Dead Sea, but that seems to be in the ancient world where they were getting this asphalt from. All the way from the Dead Sea, which is, if you think of where Jerusalem is, go east.
yes.
So that's where they would be getting it from and taking it all the way down into Egypt. And it's a good possibility that this is where they were getting the asphalt for mortar for the Tower of Babel as well.
Absolutely. Now, if I'm not mistaken, super interesting. If I'm not mistaken, if we go back into Genesis and we look at that word that it says slime they had for mortar, see if I can't find this real quick. They had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And one of these, it actually uses that word butadiene or butylene.
Bitumen.
Thank you. Yes. One of these uses it. And I thought that was really cool right here.
Asphalt, slime, pitch, asphalt, and bitumen.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's crazy, man. So
that's exactly what it's saying right there. So
yeah,
I would say that's probably where they got it from, is from the Dead Sea there, especially if the Egyptians were using it. It was probably well known in the ancient world that, that's where you get it from.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading a few different articles. One of them said that throughout periods of time, it seems to produce a little more, and other times it seems to produce a little less. One of the articles claimed that there was a time in existence that it was producing chunks of asphalt the size of a small car, whatever that is.
Insane.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a Prius or a smart car, or what you would consider a small car, but regardless, that's just bouncing out of the ocean. Supposedly it floats to the surface. They brought their boats up to it and just drug it up to the shore, and it's dried out when the wind hits it. So that is just, God's cool, man. God does some really, really cool stuff. So very neat. So we've gone through so far Genesis. We've looked at the narrative according to Jubilees, and now we're going to take a look into a different book, and this is called the Book of Jasher or Josher. And I'm gonna just hang out for a second, Austin. If you would just give a brief synopsis on what this book is and some of your opinions on it.
Now, Jasher, and we've seen comments and we understand this going in. There was no J in ancient Hebrew, okay? Just like Jesus' name wasn't Jesus in Hebrew. It was, some people say Yeshua. I think the more accurate translation is Yahushua, just because the definition, and I'm not a big sacred name guy, okay? I believe that you can, as long as you're calling on the name of Jesus or Yeshua, you can be saved. I was saved through the name of Jesus, and that's how it's translated down to the English language. Just like you don't say Jesus in Spanish, it's Jesus, and then the Latin it was Iesus, and and you can argue that it was corrupted if you want, but my prayers have been answered through the name of Jesus. I believe the correct name is Yahushua. But we understand that there was no J, okay, so it would be the book of Yashar, and it's mentioned in the Bible, and where it's mentioned, it's almost like it's written in that book, so it's true, okay. It's written in the book of Yashar. Now, that being said, a lot of people believe that Jubilees is actually that book of Yashar that was spoken of. I'm inclined to believe that, just off the reading of both of those books. This book, and we're going to call it Jasher because that's the modern day way that English speaking people understand this book. The book of Jasher seems to be more of a Pharisee text. It's like almost like there's a little bit of embellishment in some of the things they say. I'm not completely sure on that, and I don't want to just completely dog out Jasher, okay? So that's not what I'm trying to do here, but I do want you to, we always say, take what's in these extra biblical texts with a grain of salt. The grain of salt needs to be a little bit bigger when you're reading Yashar, in my opinion, okay? And that's just me from my conscience wanting to convey to you what I feel is right. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. I'm not the end all be all on this. Just from my reading of it and my understanding of things, you need to take a little bit of bigger grain of salt when you read Jasher. Okay. Now that being said, I just in good conscience we want to get that out of the way. But it has a lot of interesting stories and there's a lot of cool stuff in there for sure. You know what I mean? So let's read what they have to say about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I wanted to cite the two verses that you referenced just a second ago.
Sure.
In Joshua 10:13 and in 2 Samuel 1:18 is where you see the verbiage of, is this not written in the book of Jasher? So just wanted to put that out there in case you were unfamiliar with what Austin was talking about. And we will continue to call it Jasher throughout the rest of the video and probably from here on. We try to speak to people where they're at, man. If you've got the knowledge and you've got all these cool little pronunciations and stuff, I mean, good for you, man. I don't want to pick on you for having it.
To be honest with you, I was right there with you.
Yeah.
And just with growing within my spirit and everything else, I just don't want to beat people on the head with things, and I want to be able to talk to people the way they understand things and the way they read things. And just for example, if I'm speaking to somebody that doesn't understand English, they're not going to understand what I'm saying. Okay. A lot of people were raised in Baptist churches and Methodist churches, and they have no idea what these Hebrew sayings are and what the grammar is and what letters are there and what weren't there and how things, they don't even know how it reads. Okay. So, and if you're to the point where you understand what the names are in Hebrew and all that stuff, like that's super good. And we're not trying to knock you at all.
No,
we were there. We eat clean. We try to follow all the commandments and all the laws the best that we can. We Passover. We don't do Easter. We don't do Christmas. We are right there with you, dude. Right there with you. But not everybody is there yet.
Exactly.
Not everybody's there yet. So we want to try, and that understanding is a fine understanding to have. And Yahushua is the name as far as I'm concerned. But I've been wrong about things before. I'm not a Hebrew expert, and a lot of the people we're talking to don't know that stuff. And we'll get to it, and we'll cover it. We just haven't covered it yet. But I don't think you're going to go to hell for calling on the name of Jesus and calling on the Most High God in the language that you have and the understanding that you have. Okay? So not everybody has that same understanding that you or me or Bronson may have with it. But we're getting there, and we're going back to these Hebrew definitions. And if somebody who doesn't know anything about the Bible follows along, they'll start to get it too and start to read it too. But for right now, we just want to meet people where they're at. That we're not Hebrew roots guys. We like Paul. You know what I mean? There's and a lot of the Hebrew root stuff is good. That's how I really came into the truth about things, through that Hebrew roots thing. But it's kind of got co-opted, and it's turned into almost like a Kabbalist type of thing. And we're not fans of the Kabbalah. We're not fans of the Gnostic text. We're not. I believe that's from the other side. And, just so you know, when you're talking about Gnostic texts, all the Gnostic schools were found by Kabbalists, mystical rabbis, okay? Stuff straight out of Babylon, the other side, the enemy, okay? So we try to stay away from that stuff the best we can. We're going to do a big episode tackling a lot of that stuff, a lot of the lies that Billy Carson comes out with, because I know a lot of Christians have been looking at that stuff lately. And if you have any kind of understanding, you can point out, like, well, that timeline doesn't match up. What he's saying there was a known forgery. What he's doing, but he's very eloquent with it and talks down to you like he's an expert on all these scrolls, and he's not. He's not at all. He uses a lot of stuff from Zechariah Sitchin that's been proven wrong over and over again. And a lot of these Gnostic guys have built their whole worldview on this worship of the Anunnaki from the ancient aliens crowd and all that stuff. And all those translations were garbage and proven garbage time and time again by guys that were trying to mislead people. So if you're in that crowd and you want to say that we're religious propaganda, well, who's really the propagandist?
Thank you.
We're telling you the definitions of what's in the text. He's telling you that, this text, that Harvard has said Jesus had a wife. Well, no, it didn't. It was a forgery and proven to be a forgery, written on old papyrus like 8 or 9 years ago. And then 2 weeks ago, Billy Carson wants to say, oh, no, it's right here. And if he really is an expert like he claims he is, he would know that's a forgery. So either he's not an expert or he's lying to you. So sorry, I know I went on my little rant right there, but when we get into this type of stuff, it's always like, oh no, it's the Anunnaki and God's really the devil, or Bel and Yahweh are the same. It's like, no, they're not. They're not at all. And if you want to be a polytheist, that's your belief system. We're on the other side of things. We're Christians. So, you want to call it propaganda, that's fine. What you're using is propaganda too. All you're using is from the other side, from the polytheistic mindset. And on top of that, you're using a translation that really isn't a translation. It's a one big lie by a wacko. So here you go. Let's go ahead and get into this, Jasher.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you going through that. I'm sure a lot of our audience was able to follow that.
I'm sure a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about, but if you look far enough, you'll find a lot of these lies, and they want to talk about Yaldabaoth and the demiurge and all this type of stuff. Well, that's from Gnostic text. So if you want to fall in line under the Pharisees and under the Kabbalist wizards, you guys go right ahead. I'm going to follow the straight and narrow path of Jesus Christ. That's what I'm going to do.
As for me, my house,
that's what you want to, if you want to use the Hebrew name, okay. let's just go ahead and get into this. I can stand on my soapbox and talk about this all day long because there's a lot of misdirection and a lot of lies out there, and they're using it to attack the Christian church. Well, isn't that funny? The Christian church is the only one that gets attacked, and the ancient Hebrews are the only ones that stole their religion from everybody. Isn't that funny how that works? Everybody else is just so great, but those were the ones they pilfered it. Even Dr. Heiser said that Moses pilfered texts. Like, really? So every other religion was just that's their religion, and that had it, and that's theirs, and that's their belief system. But the ancient Hebrews that lead down from Shem down to Solomon and David down to Yeshua, those were the only people that stole their religion. Like, come on, bro. Okay, so I see all the fingers pointing in one direction, the whole world hating one way. So I know one thing, that's the right way. If that's the only one that gets attacked by the world, that's the only one that's not okay, that's the only one that supposedly stole their religion, well, guess where I'm going to be? Because I'm at enmity against the world. I'm with the Most High God. And if you want to, stand in that circle and point fingers towards the only religion apparently that stole their religion, you go right ahead. I'm going to be at enmity against the world. The world is my enemy. I'm of the kingdom of heaven. I'm of the kingdom of the Most High God. So you guys can be on that side. This is the side we're on. Go ahead, man.
Yes, sir. He is cooking on NBA Jam. He's on fire.
But I'm just serious, man. I hear this stuff all the time. It's like, okay, well, prove it. You can't prove it. You can't. I can't prove anything. We all have to have faith. So you can either have faith in the Anunnaki or you can have faith in Yahushua. I'm going to have faith in the Most High God that saved me, that has affected me personally in a spiritual level, that has changed my life. I'm going to stand over here. You guys stand with the nations of the earth. I'm going to stand with the kingdom of heaven.
Amen. Amen. All right. Book of Jasher, verse 23. Here we go. Let me tell you what chapter we're in. I got ahead of myself too. I'm feeling what you're saying, bro. Picking up what you're putting down. Wow, man, that's just amazing. So we're coming down here into the book of Jasher where we get into our section of the Tower of Babel. And we're going to have to re-find it because I moved myself around like a genius while I was feeling what Austin was saying. So we're going to go right here, press find. We're going to type in, let's do that. Let's type in 70. That's going to get us right where we want to be. Boom, boom, boom. You will have to forgive me, guys. I have completely moved this around here like a genius and got us off the wrong section here.
We may just have to jump over to sacred text, man, because we know where that's at. We know.
Let's do it.
We know how that works out.
Let's do that. Sorry
we'll
about
have to scroll a little bit on this, guys, but at least we'll be able to go right to the chapter.
Exactly right. All right. Scrolling down just a little bit. All right, here we go. King Nimrod reigned securely in all the earth, and it was all under his control. Let me go ahead and zoom in here just a little bit. We're still in chapter 9, and we are going to start over into verse 23. And all the families assembled, consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of the ground to build the city and the tower. And they sought it in the whole earth, and they found none like the valley of the east of the land of Shinar. About a 2 days' walk, and they journeyed there, and they dwelt there. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin, and they began to build it. And while they were building against the Lord God of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. Now that is pretty cool, because my entire life I've always heard that the people who built the Tower of Babel were going to make war with God. I remember hearing preachers on stage say this thing, man, and me just being like, where in the world did you get that from? And here we are, we're starting to see make war with God in heaven. And I have a feeling, could be wrong, but I have a feeling that perhaps this is the source of where that information comes from. 26. And all these people and all the families divided themselves in three parts. Three parts. The first said, "We will ascend into heaven and fight against him." The second said, "We will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them." And the third part said, "We will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears." And God knew all their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building.
All right,
I just
pause
want to,
there.
yeah, please, yeah, break
Okay.
that down.
So we have three different groups here. And I don't know if you guys saw me counting, but we have three different groups. Okay. The first said, "We will ascend into heaven and fight against him." So they want to go up there and fight against God. All right. It's the same thing people want to do today.
Right.
Okay. Then we will ascend and place our own gods there and serve them. Now, could that have been idols? I don't know. I imagine it was probably their masters they wanted to ascend and place there. Probably an Anki, maybe an Inki. They want to place there because where's he at? He's in the Abzu, under the earth. That's who he is. He's the god of the underworld, the Hades in Greek mythology. And this is who they want to make out to be the good guy, the underworld. In the abyss, that's where we get the name abyss from, is from the Abzu. That's who they want to make their god. So I would assume that's who they wanted to place in heaven. And then we will descend into heaven and smite him with bows and spears. Just the amount of pride and hubris and ultimately stupidity of these people. You're going to kill God with bows and spears.
Right.
Go ahead, try it. See how it works out for you.
Yeah. Crazy, man. It's just crazy.
I put to you this way: how prideful do these idiots have to be? The dragon couldn't do anything with him.
Rahab couldn't do
Hillel
it.
ben Shakar himself couldn't do anything with him.
Right.
Hillel ben Shakar is where you get that Lucifer, son of the morning. It's what the actual language is Hillel ben Shakar. So they couldn't do anything with it, but these guys are going to build a tower and kill them with bows and arrows and spears. Yeah, okay, bro. All right. So this is where they get that. They wanted to make war with God. So why did God come down? He just didn't want those people working together. He just wanted to keep mankind down. Really? Well, they wanted to kill him. And if you guys watched our Nimrod video, it says, Nimrod made it like in the culture there at in Shinar, let's just call it Shinar for now, that, it was cowardice if you submitted to the Most High God. If you took your rightful place in creation and worshiped the Most High God, not their gods, then they tried to make you out like a coward, just like they do today. They try and talk down to you and make you out to be something that you're not, when you just want to have your rightful place in creation. They wanted to ascend and kill God for sending the flood. They long for the days of the old gods when the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim, walked the earth. They long for the quote-unquote golden age, the age of Atlantis. That's what they wanted. They wanted to live with these fallen beings, and they were mad that they didn't get the opportunity to. So they were raging against God and wanted to kill God. So this is why the tower was blown down. This is why the languages were confused, because they had come together and not come together under the worship of the Most High God, not come together to, make even this earth a better place. They came together to build a tower to kill God, or to attempt to kill God. So that's why it happened.
Well, what are they doing in Revelation, 2021? What's their attempt to do there? That's the next time that they all become of one mind. What are they doing?
They're coming against the camp of the saints.
Yeah. So there they go again. It's
instead of coming together to, end famine or to, do anything of a positive note. No, they come together to try and kill the righteous, or they come together to attempt to ascend into heaven and kill God and place Enki there. So it doesn't seem like the intentions of men are all that great when they come together.
That's right.
And when you have a figure like a Nimrod figure, or you have a figure like the dragon, they're coming together under wickedness to war against righteousness.
Yes. Yes, I would take it to say, and this is, I've never had this thought before, but the one thing that every human man and every human woman have in common is our tendency for wickedness. I don't think every one of us have a tendency for righteousness, though it is there in lots of us, and some of us choose to reject it. I don't know if that righteousness is in every single human being. So perhaps it's just the one thing we all have in common is our sinful fallen
Well,
nature.
we do have the sinful nature, and we're born into it. We know that from all the scriptures. And if you're even a new Christian, you understand this, that we are wicked creatures and we're in need of a savior. Okay. Now, Jesus also says, and you can find it in the Old Testament, you can find it in the New Testament. When Jesus is speaking, I set before you blessings and curses, death and life. And he says to choose life. So we all have the choices to make. We all have that free will. We can go which way we want. But without the guidance from the Most High, we get attacked and oppressed by these demonic forces and from the dark side and from wicked people. And without the guidance from the Most High or the knowledge of the righteous, then there's not a whole lot of choice for us if we're not seeking out the Most High God, if we're not seeking out righteousness. Then we all tend to go on that dark path because, man, it's slammed in your face.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Lustfulness, greed, it's right there in front of you all the time. And, says the way is straight and the gate is narrow. You have the left-hand path, you have the right-hand path, and you have that straight and narrow path. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to do because the whole world is, the scientific community, education, the nations of the earth, the governments of the earth, they're all against the Most High, even today, and it definitely will be as we go further on in time. It's hard to do, and without having the knowledge of the Most High and being saved through Jesus, then there's not a lot of hope for us.
Yeah,
so this is just like I said about how everybody else wants to point the finger there. Well, it's everybody else is down this path of wickedness, and we have to have courage of our convictions to stay on that straight path. And we'll see the same type of thing coming in the end times, where these nations of the world will come together and and talk about unity. We all need to come together as one, like the John Lennon song.
Coexist.
Well, it seems like when we all come together as one, it's usually under a banner of wickedness.
That's right, man. Thank God that he is there to help us every step of the way, man.
I know a lot of people don't like nationalists, but who made the nation? Who separated us into nations? The Most High God did. So I know a lot of people think, the nationalists are so evil. Well, God put us in those, it separated us in that fashion, and we're going to get into that a little bit. I know I've been on my soapbox today, so let's go ahead and finish this out.
Oh, it's a neat concept you just presented there, man. I like that. That's really, really cool. I wanted to add one thing to it, that this mean, genocidal God that just can't stand unity, he didn't come down here with a ball of fire and kill everybody or anything, dude. All he did was just mess up the languages. And like, bro, I know a little bit of Spanish. You and I have learned a couple of little bits of Hebrew. It's not like he.
Yeah, well, the thing is this. He gave dominion to Noah over the whole earth, and we've read about this in Jubilees several times. We've been referencing it. He gave dominion to Noah to divide the earth into the three parts. And everybody was supposed to stay in their own lane, basically. And there's a curse in Jubilees for anybody that violates those boundaries. All right. So what they did is they said, no, we're all going to come together in this land of Shinar, build this tower, and make more of the God. So God said, okay, if you don't want to just listen to my commandments anyways, I'm going to separate you by languages. And you're going to have to go in your own nations anyway.
Wow.
So you didn't want to listen to what I was telling you in the first place. The whole earth was given to you guys. You were divided, just supposed to stay where you were supposed to stay at and not cross these boundaries. You guys decided to blend the boundaries, come together and make war with me. So guess what? You had your choice. Now I'm stepping in. I'm going to divide you into your nations, and you're going to go your own ways.
Man,
I gave you the chance to do it the right way, and instead you decided to try and come kill me with bows, you insignificant little peons. So now I gave you the chance to do the right thing. So now we're going to go ahead and set this right now. And he didn't kill them. He just confused the languages and sent them off.
Man, well said about that point in Jubilees, man. That's really, really nice. And so when we get in here, um, they divided themselves into three parts. We just covered those. And when they were building, they built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower. And on account of its height, the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders and their assent to it. So I know that's kind of funny language, but what it's saying is that because the building was so high, the mortar and the bricks couldn't reach the builders when it needed to be built at the very tippity top where they were still adding more to it until those who had went up had completed a full year. It took them an entire year climbing this thing, just one brick over your head, climbing this sucker, and you reached the builders and gave them the mortar and the bricks, and it was done daily. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would all weep over it. And if a man fell and died, none of them would look at him. I mean, these guys were just almost like little robots, man. They're just so dialed into this. If you can imagine, let's just pretend for a second that the asphalt is coming from the Dead Sea all the way over here to where, let's just call it Babylon for right now. That is, for one, a really long journey, right? It's not like they put him on a jet airliner and brought him over there in an hour. That's a long journey. Then it takes an entire year to bring up the slime, the mortar, and the bricks. And if they dropped one, it's like, but if somebody else died, it meant nothing to them because what they were attending to do was far beyond just one man's life. It was for generations, legacies.
Think about how they're working and working and working, and just slaving over it and just cared so much about getting this done. You think there weren't dark forces driving this? You think that wasn't happening? Oh, yeah, that was happening. They were spiritually driven to be maniacally building this day after day after day, hauling these huge bricks up there. And they didn't care about the people dying. They cared about the brick. They cared about completing the objective. They were spiritually driven to do this.
Wow. Good point.
Yeah, and I believe it all goes back to, in talking about our earlier videos, the seed war. Okay? So how do you stomp out the seed? You infect the bloodlines, right? So the flood comes, wipes out all those people. Then you have afterwards them doing this. So it's almost like that something from the spiritual realm, we're sending these guys on a clear suicide mission. It's like the dark side wanted God to go ahead and just wipe these people out too. But instead, God said, no. I gave them a commandment to stay within their regions. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to kill all these people. I'm not going to do that. They're trying to attempt to kill me. So God, in my opinion, has well within his right to go ahead and send fire down from heaven and get rid of them all.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But instead, he divided the nations by their tongues, and they went off and spread across the face of the whole earth, just like God wanted them to in the first place. So the dark side sent these people on a suicide mission. When I was growing up, we called it a dummy mission, to go crash out. They sent them on a dummy mission. And God said, well, I'm not going to kill them. They're just going to do what I wanted anyways, and this tower's going to go bye-bye. So there you go. So I think it was something spiritually driving these people almost on not almost, on a suicide mission. I think it was supposed to be an affront to God, and let's just say Satan was trying, and there's a lot more than Satan. We know this, okay? So don't kill us in the comments. We know it's a vast, dark realm. Please go watch our earlier videos. But they were sent by Satan on a dummy mission to be wiped out by God. And God said, no, they're just going to do what I said anyways, and we're going to wipe this tower out. So he just hit the reset button once again without wiping out the people. Since he's such a hateful God, they were coming to kill him. He said, no, they're just going to do what I said anyways.
Wow.
Enjoy that, guys.
What's interesting about that is, and I know we're going for a minute here, but this is, to me, this is what's fun here. This is really, really fun to go back and forth on this type of topic here. We talked about how Babel meant the gate of God. We talked about maybe some of the significance between the geographical location and how it may be in a place where the firmament may be a little bit thinner, if you will. I'm really speaking poetically here, understand. I know you do, but this may have been a place where the veil between reality and the spiritual realm was thinned out, perhaps a portal or Jacob's Ladder-esque type of talk.
Well, that means when it talks about like the vision in Enoch, where it says the windows of heaven were opened and water filled the enclosure, this may simply be where one of these windows of heaven are.
And maybe some of these darker entities are using this as a way to travel back and forth. We see in Job in the counsel of God that Satan is up there presenting himself before the Lord. So if these people are sitting here building this tower, it wouldn't be too far-fetched for the evil entities to just be right there, you know what I mean, coming through these windows and seeing them, making them easy to persuade. So very
talks about the spiritual wickedness in high places. I mean, they're building a super high place. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? And if it's in conjunction with the geography of some sort of window of heaven or a portal or a stargate, and there are portals within this ancient Hebrew mindset. Go and check in the Path of the Luminaries and in the Book of Enoch. It says that the sun and moon go through these portals. Okay, so that's not out of the, there is precedence for portals, or what we would call like a stargate today, to go between the spiritual and the physical realms. And maybe they were building it up to the second heaven to try and draw down powers from that second heaven into that area. There's a lot of things that it could be, but what we do see here is that they were trying to make war with God. That was their intent.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the Lord knew their thoughts, and it came to pass when they were building that they cast arrows towards the heaven, and all the arrows fell upon them filled with blood. And when they saw them, they said to each other, surely we have slain all those that are in heaven. I mean, how delusional you got to be, man. That is just crazy. I'm just going to shoot this arrow up into the sky. It comes down with some blood on it, which is very weird. And they think that, yeah, we've got all those guys in heaven, which is just bananas. Like if I hit you, I'm not going to say I hit you. Let's say you shoot me with an arrow. I feel like it would be stuck in my body. You know what I'm saying? Unless you cast it from something with an incredible amount of power to clear right through me. But I don't know. That's just kind of strange. Why there was blood on these arrows? It says that this is from the Lord.
Take that big grain of salt as we're reading through this Jasher.
Yeah. Verse 30, thank you, Austin. For this was from the Lord in order to cause them to err, in order to destroy them from off the face of the earth. So the Lord is putting, according to Jasher, blood on the tips of these arrows in order to cause them to err. Now that is just, we can go another 10, 20 minutes just discussing on that, but we'll let that go. 31, they built the tower and the city, and they did this thing daily until many days and years were elapsed. I'm pretty sure Jubilees said 43 years. And God said to the 70 angels, now that is interesting. We'll continue. And God said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so unto them. Do you want to stop there for a second, or you want to keep going?
I will tell you what, guys, let's come back to the 70 angels. Okay. We're going to come back to that, because when he's saying that us, remember I said keep that bookmark. This is what the us is. Okay.
All right, so here we go. We've only got just a handful of verses left here. Thank you guys for your patience. If you've made it this far, you are a legend. 33. And from that day following, they forgot each man's neighbor's tongue, and they couldn't understand to speak in one tongue. For when the builder took from the hands his neighbor lime or stone, which he didn't order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbor that he would die. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this manner. So if anybody died, it was by the hand of man. It was not by the hand of God. And the Lord smote the three divisions that were there. He punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said that we will ascend into heaven and serve our gods became like apes and elephants. Maybe a similar situation to perhaps what happens to Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. Those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, the Lord killed them. Now, how'd he do it now? One man through the hand of his neighbor. So they turned against each other, okay?
Well, they were violent and wanted to go kill God, so they were eaten up with violence anyways.
Yep.
That's what they wanted to do. You got death then, baby.
Yep, you live by the sword, you die by it. The third division of those said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him. The Lord scattered them throughout the earth. And those who were left among them, okay, these may have been a group that was not in the group of three here. That's how I read this. Yeah. And those who were left among them, when they knew and understood the evil which was coming upon them, they dipped. They forsook the building and they became scattered upon the face of the whole earth.
What I see here is this is just the guys that are just trying to provide for their families. This was the work that was available, and they were just building a building. They were like construction workers. We're just doing our job, getting our daily bread, going home, spending time with the kids. They saw what was going on. I was like, oh, we're not supposed to be doing this. We're out. We're out of here, y'all. My fault. Okay.
Right.
Okay, apparently something we were doing wasn't right. So these are probably the guys that didn't have the higher understanding like these other three divisions. These were probably the people that understood the designs, were participating in rituals, and knew what they were doing. Apparently they did. They knew they were going to war. These other guys are probably the dudes that were just carrying these bricks up, or forming the bricks, and just doing work, just hired hands basically, that weren't in on the secret plan. And we see that a lot within the world today. There's a lot of useful idiots, let's call it that, within this new world order, modern day mystery Babylon establishment we see forming across the world. You have the upper echelon to understand exactly what they're doing. Then you have the level underneath them that have kind of an idea, and the level underneath them that are probably misled a little bit but know a little bit, and then you have the people that are just doing the work.
Yes.
Not everybody within a lot of the organizations like Masons and all that type of stuff that, at the lower the Blue Lodge levels, those are just dudes drinking beers. And that's who I see as this here. You don't know what the 33-degree Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, you don't know exactly what the signs and the symbols mean. And until you get to a certain degree, you're lied to. And that's what I see as this here, is that you had the high Masons at the top that knew what they were doing and knew what they were trying to accomplish. And then you had these Blue Lodge guys down here at the bottom that were just making bricks and drinking beers with their buddies. And they saw this happen. They're like, oh, we made a mistake. We're out.
Right. I agree 100%, man. You may know them as the cogs of the machine, or you may know them as just another brick in the wall, just your average dude who's just being taken advantage of. But I can't imagine that, man. You and me are clocking into work every day, and one day you show up and everybody's talking in funny languages. They're throwing bricks at each other and killing each other. So I'm clocking out, bro. I'm going home.
Yeah, you see the supernatural wind and come and knock down into all the world. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
I think we pissed the big guy off. Excuse my language, but that's what I would say. Like, okay, we're out of here, guys. We're out.
Yep, I'm going home. I'm starting a Bible podcast on YouTube.
Right.
And
if you're saved, you've probably been in situations like this. It's like, oh man, what am I doing? What have I done? When you first get saved, it's all you come into that conviction. It's like, man, I can't believe I was doing all that. You feel that shame. Oh man, that's the worst. You think you're just living your life, but you see you're living in unrighteousness and filth, and you just wake up like that prodigal son in the pig pen, look around like, oh God, what have I done? I got to get out of here. There's several little allegories of how I see these guys in that last group.
Very nice, man. Very nice. Therefore he called that place Babel, and there the Lord confounded the language of the whole earth. Behold, it was in the east of the land of Shinar. And as to the tower which the sons of men built, remember, Jubilee says he hits it with a powerful wind, which is really, really cool. But Jasher here says that the earth opens its mouth and swallows up 1/3, and the fire descended from heaven and burns another third, and the other third is left to the part which was aloft, and its circumference is 3 days' walk. So neat that you had three sections of men who had a plan that they were going to do something, and then their tower gets destroyed by three sections. One gets swallowed into the earth, one is devoured by fire, and one is just left aloft and left into the earth. And I'm going to take a major stretch here and say that perhaps this is some type of reflection of judgment, where Sheol being inside of the earth, the fire being the lake of fire, and perhaps what was aloft maybe being during, I don't know, maybe 1,000-year reign, where these guys are outside of the temple. We see where, in what I would call the 1,000-year reign, when these people do not observe Sukkot, they're cursed with no rain and things of that nature. So perhaps, I know I'm reaching for straws here, but perhaps there's some type of reflection or symbolism here for the way God judges the earth. I mean, what do you think?
Well, we see here there's a clear disagreement between Jasher and Jubilees.
Yes.
There's a clear disagreement here. And there's several clear disagreements between these two books as you go. That's why there's two camps, and you'll have the one that thinks Jasher is the book of Yashar that's mentioned in the Bible. And then you have people that think that, no, this is a later corruption that was supposed to counteract Jubilees, which was the actual book of Yashar. So you have two different camps there. I will say this. The one that seems to agree with the Bible more is Jubilees.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't that video, so we won't get into it too heavy here. We will eventually go through and break all these type of things down. But that's why I tell you to take a big grain of salt when you're reading Yashar. Because in the Bible, for example, it says that nothing that they imagine to do will be restrained from them. And in Jasher, it says they plan to go up and kill God, and I don't think that that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that we won't go there too much, but let's look at some of the cool stuff in here. Okay,
let's do it, man.
So let's look. It says that first group of people became as elephants and apes.
Yes.
Can we highlight that just so everybody at home can see this in the screen? I know we've probably rattled some cages of people, and I know we're probably going to have some people upset with us, but I got to tell the truth how I see it.
Sure.
Yeah, let's highlight that. So we will ascend into heaven and serve our gods became like apes and elephants. Now, that sounds way far out there, but there are a group of gods in the ancient world and over into India that resemble this exactly. Could we pull up some of those?
I'd be more than happy to. Here we are in Wikipedia. We're going to look at this group called the Vinara. I'm going to read a small little excerpt for you. In Hinduism, Vinara means the forest dwellers. They're monkeys or apes, a race of forest-dwelling people. The Vinaras helped Rama defeat Ravana. This is a pattern here, and it is hard to follow if you're not familiar. And I'm not one who would ever call myself an expert in Hindu. So here we go. In the epic of Ramayana, the Vinaras help Rama defeat Ravana, and they're generally depicted as humanoid apes or human-like beings. And I'll zoom into this picture here. There you go.
I'll tell you what, man. Could we look up? Do we have Hunaman? Do we have that anywhere?
I certainly did. This may have been lost. You'll have to forgive us, guys. We ran into some technical difficulties on the first 2 or 3 times trying to record this thing. And so we may have lost some things along the way, but it's not too far or out the way for us to just find it and Google it and get us a little idea here. Hunaman. Here we go. Hunaman. Let's try it on Google and see what happens. I don't know why it took me this way. Do you have a spelling for that? Because if you do, I can run on to our next little race real quick where you find that. And that would be very, very helpful. Our next little entity we're going to look at where Austin gets us cleared up on that side is Ganesha. We'll find you a quick little image here. Everyone is probably really familiar with this type of imagery. We'll zoom in here. With this elephant, sometimes depicted with 4 arms, 8 arms, and 16 arms. There's a lot of little depictions out there. But this is obviously a human type body. We see the torso and the legs. Right here in this picture, you can actually see the human-like feet passing by. And the head is like that of an elephant. And this is actually found in so much more than just Hinduism, but you see the imagery found in Jainism and Tibetan Buddhism. And so there is a precedence for this. And again, I will never, ever claim to be an expert on the matter. But when you see this type of stuff, especially when it's not just a neighborhood of people, but countries, massive countries, lots of population, speaking about the same thing, you have to believe that there's a reason for that. And we'll move over here for the Gajashura. In Hindu epics, the Gajashura is an elephant demon, is a generic name given to an asura, demon, who assumes the form of an elephant. And so here's some characters here in the religion. The son of Mahishasura is a god killed by Shiva. And his head is attached to his younger son and the god of wisdom, Ganesha. So there you go. There's that elephant head on Ganesha. And when he's defeated, I'm sorry?
I got that spelling for you if you'd like it.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
No, Hanuman is Hanumman.
It's exactly what I typed in. It's so bananas. All right, here we go. Wikipedia. Now.
Oh, pull up that picture. There's your monkey man right there.
Check that out right there. So one was a race. This seems to be an individual. And this is Hanuman showing Rama and Sita within his heart. So he has individuals within his heart. An illustration from Ravi Varma Press. So that is just so interesting here. Now, Austin, I don't know how much time you want to take on this, but we,
I just wanted to show that there's a little precedence for what they were saying in Jasher there, that there are these elephant and ape-like gods, and they both seem to end up in this Hindu religion. So it seems like that they almost went off to the same place together, and took the role as gods or demigods within the Sanskrit text.
Yes, that is very interesting. There's one more section here in Jasher that we wanted to look at here. That we found
70, yeah.
The 70. So I will try to find that. Here we go in verse 32. So I'll read this one more time for you guys. So we're in Jasher. This is chapter 9, verse 32. And God said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, Come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And it's for some reason not letting me scroll back to the left again. We're going to back out. Zoom out. Zoom out. There we go. And 70 angels. So the 70 angels here, when I first saw this, I was actually on the phone with you and I read this and I said, Austin, who is this? Is there any type of biblical precedence? I couldn't think off the top of my head. 70 angels.
There definitely is. And this is where we get into where we were not taught the way we were supposed to be taught. In the Bible, it says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So let's go here to Psalms.
Let's do it, man.
Now, this is a verse that gets used against Christians a lot because we're taught there's only one God. There's only one God. Well, the sons of God were also called gods, okay? So you have to understand that he is called the Most High God for a reason. The angels are also known as gods, okay? Small g gods. All right. So let's read this a little bit, and then we're going to give a little bit bigger of a breakdown of this, okay? And this is something that people in the esoteric world understand. This is something that the people that are Gnostics understand, and it's something that the ancient Hebrews understood. The ancient Canaanites understood this. A lot of people understood this. There's corruptions of this, whether you have El, which is the Canaanite god El, not our god El. And just so you know, back then, God, a lot of people use God. Hindu people would say God. Arabs say Allah, which just means God. Like God is a generic term.
Yes.
Okay? So let's just get that understood, okay? And El back in that day was a generic term. It just means God, okay? Now they had, for the Canaanites, they had this El, right? And the 70 sons of El, which were on Mount Hermon, all right? Now we know that God is not the God of Mount Hermon. The Most High God is the Most High God of Mount Zion, okay? So we have this kind of inversion where the dark side takes the actual story and co-ops it into what their story that they're telling. And then after all these years, it gets flipped around like, oh, we stole it from them. Like, no, dude, we didn't. Not at all. So nice. There's just a cheap imitation of the Most High God, the actual creator. Okay. Yeah. So let's let's get into this and let's read the psalm a little bit, and we'll get into these definitions. And this is a very misunderstood passage, so we're going to take a little time with this, and then we got some clips coming after this. So if you're tired of hearing us two talk, just hold on a minute. We got some clips coming for you. But let's get into this. This is important, okay?
Here we go. All right. We're reading out of the book of Psalms. This is chapter 83, verse 1. This is a song or a psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel, yep, I realized that. I was sitting there, I was like, I don't remember it being this long.
Yeah, the continuation of this, but yes.
Yeah, here we go. Psalms 82. And take two, action. Psalms 82, verse 1, a psalm of Asaph. All right. I was like, yo, this is not right. God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. All right, hold on. I'm reading the word of God. Let me have some respect. God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods.
Oh, wow. Okay, so hold on. God stands in the congregation of the mighty, and he judges amongst the gods.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other gods.
Yes.
Okay. Huh. Okay, so this is what he's saying to these other gods. And you may hear people talk about the council of the Elohim. This is the council of the Elohim, and God is standing amongst this council, and he's judging these other gods. Mm-hmm. These would be the gods of the nations. And if you will follow with me a little bit, those 70, which came down, I believe that those 70 were the 70 languages that the groups of people were split into, 70 different languages with one of these gods over top of those nations. They were the gods of those nations. So these were those 70 that came down, and they did not do what they were supposed to do after Babel, and led these people astray. And now God is standing amongst this council of these supposedly most powerful beings and judging them. So basically, Dad's come in the room and he's laying the law down to these sons of his. So let's go ahead and go through this. So God standing in the congregation of the mighty, he judgeth amongst the gods. So he is the Most High God. These others are just subjects to him. Now let's see what they were doing that he's judging them for.
All right. Psalms 82, verse 2. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations.
All nations.
Mm-hmm.
All nations. So these were over top of the nations of the earth after the Tower of Babel incident, where they were split up. And instead of leading them in righteousness and leading them to the Most High, they took upon their own mantle to take worship upon themselves, and they judged and ruled over these places from their spiritual high place wickedly. They did not follow in the way that God wanted them to follow in. They did not lead the people in the way he wanted to lead them. And now he's telling them, hey guys, you're going to die like men. So a lot of people try to make this as, oh, he's talking to the elders of Israel, or, oh, he's talking to, no, that's not what it's saying at all. Right. Because the elders of Israel were going to die like men anyway, because they were men. So who he's talking to here are not men. Okay. And it says it clearly, but, especially in America and in the Baptist church and stuff, they take all of the spirituality out of it. Well, if you just read what the text says, he's talking to the gods of those nations that were set over top of those nations after Babel. So let's go and look at these definitions here. Just make sure that we're clear on this, that these were not men.
Sure. Let's the congregation of the mighty. Is that what you want to look at? Mighty?
Let's look at the gods, God and gods. Let's look at that.
Yeah, let's do that.
And we can look at the congregation too.
Sure.
So
So
God
God
there is H.
and our word is Elohim. And so plural, rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods, God, goddess, godlike, godlike one.
Okay,
Works.
let's stop here for 1 second, okay? Because this
Sure.
is another common misconception in the quote unquote spirituality community is that anytime it says God in the Bible, it's supposed to say gods. Well, that's not true. If you have any kind of understanding about how the Hebrew language works, Billy Carson, you would understand that there is also plural intensive words. Let's modern day sheep. Sheep could be plural or it could be singular, and you have to judge by the verbs. So if you have any kind of understanding of language, you understand that sometimes it is plural and sometimes it's plural intensive. Okay? So I just wanted to make that very clear because that gets confused a lot nowadays.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. All right, our next one, that was a God with a capital G. And, you know, most of us know when you see that capital G, you're talking about ours. Ooh, of the mighty. That word's El. We're going to take a look at that in just a second. But he judgeth among the gods, lowercase g. And here we are again with Elohim.
Elohim.
So here we go. Rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods, lowercase g, God, lowercase g, goddess, lowercase g, godlike one, lowercase g. Works or special possessions of uppercase G, God. The true God, uppercase G, God, uppercase G. And so what we're seeing here is it looks to me as if God, uppercase G, is in this council where he's judging among the lowercase g gods. And so when we check out over here in the congregation of the mighty.
Let's take the congregation real quick. Let's show that real quick.
I'd love to.
Adar.
Congregation or gathering.
Okay.
And this is a stated assemblage, a family or a crowd, assembly, a company, congregation, multitude, people, or swarm. And so it's exactly what you would think it is. It's the congregation. So God is in a congregation of lowercase gods. And this is the congregation of the mighty. No, mighty here is not Gabor. It is El. When we come down here, El. A lot of lowercase g's here. I'll just God, godlike one, mighty men, men of rank, mighty heroes, angels, God, false God, demons, or imaginations. Here's your uppercase G. God, the one true God, Jehovah. Mighty things in nature, strength or power. That is really cool there. So I think you are 100% spot on, my friend, when you say that when we're looking into Psalms 82, we see God stands in the congregation of the El, he judgeth among the Elohim. That, to me, is exactly what you're talking about, where he is standing among this council of perhaps these 70 fallen ones, and he's telling them, you are doing a bad job, and that you will die like men and fall like one of the princes, and God will judge the earth, and he will inherit all of the nations. Now, to me,
basically he's saying that you did a terrible job, you will die. So these quote unquote gods will be cast into the lake of fire and die like men, and he, the Most High God, will roll over all the nations. All the nations that you guys have possessed and ruled over unjustly and wickedly, I'm going to rule over them. I will. And then you see later on that when Israel was scattered, they became the fullness of the nations, right? Now, let me just give you a little preview of some stuff we're going to talk about later. So they were scattered and became the fullness of the nations, these same nations, okay? So it became the fullness of the nations. And then when Jesus came back, he said he came from none but the lost sheep of the house of Israel, okay? So when Israel was scattered and went into all these nations, it looked like they were just done. They were gone. They were hidden from the face face of God, and they were just in these nations now and were away, and there was only Judah and Benjamin in the south, right?
Right.
Well, that was right until Jesus came. And in God's plan is wonderful, man, because it had Israel going and interbreeding with all these communities and bringing them in. And now, guess what? Everybody is available for salvation. So, in God's plan, He was able to save us all and to rule, and He shall inherit all the nations. So, in this fact, that it looked like the dark side had won and taken the northern tribes into captivity. And for a time there, it looked dark. And you're reading Hosea, where he gave the northern house a bill of divorce. But He came back, and He came back to save us. And if you understand the law, He had to die so the marriage covenant, Jesus had to die so these people could be redeemed.
Yes.
So He died for our sins. He died for all the nations of the earth. And so in the story of Jesus, you see what God's saying here come to pass. Okay, so this is a very powerful message, and it means a lot in the spiritual realm, because God does not break His law. Okay, He does not. So Jesus had to die. And go back and study what it says about marriage in the law in the Torah. Okay,
yes.
He had to die so he could enter back into covenant with us. It's a beautiful story, and it falls right in line with the law. And this right here is a prophecy that He shall inherit all the nations. And that's how He did it, was through Jesus Christ dying on the cross and being resurrected so that we all might have salvation. This is the actual story of redemption. This right here.
Amen. Amen. I would suggest taking a look into Romans as well, where it also gives you a nice understanding of how that marriage covenant works, that you cannot be remarried if your husband dies, or until your husband dies. Once the husband dies, the woman can be remarried. And Paul does a fantastic job, as he always does, of breaking down the Torah to those who understand it. Here we are in Daniel now. This is a very, very famous passage in Daniel. We're in chapter 10, super famous chapter. And I wanted to start in verse 12, though the subject matter pertains to verse 13. I just think 12 is just such a cool verse, man. Then he said unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I am come for thy words. Man, if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what does. It's a real formula here. You guys know, if you've been watching these videos, you know I love some formulas. You set your heart to understand, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. That's faith. And then here's your works. Faith without works is dead. And you chasten yourself before thy God. You do those two things, and bada bing, bada boom, your prayers get heard. Man, what a formula. Love that.
It's just like that verse. We always hear it. If you will humble yourself, and I will heal your land. I will hear from heaven. And so you have to humble yourself. You have to repent. So you're not going to come to understanding without humbling yourself. You have to humble yourself and realize, okay, to understand anything new, I have to realize I was wrong. Right? Yes. You have to chasten yourself. You have to repent to God, and then after that, He hears from heaven, and He comes. In that one verse, He will heal your land, and in this, He's come to answer His prayers. So this is the formula like Bronson was talking about, is to humble yourself, seek understanding and seek God's face, and chasten yourself. You have to correct yourself. You have to admit that you were wrong, and you have to correct yourself. You have to repent, and then God will hear from heaven and answer your prayers. That's the formula we're seeing right here.
It's amazing, man. It is absolutely amazing. We serve a wonderful God who doesn't hide Himself in the thick darkness the way that we would often think He does. He gives you the exact 1 + 1 = salvation formula.
And I know it's hard to do. It's hard to say, hey, I was wrong, and I need to seek a different kind of understanding, and I've been wrong in my life. And you have to humble yourself. It's about humbleness. And it seems like this has been a theme. You have to humble yourself and come before the Father and repent. And then after that is when He heals the land. After that, that's when your prayers are heard. Okay? Yes. Now, when we get into this next verse is what we were here for in the first place, but that is an amazing verse there. And it ties in to New Testament concepts like you wouldn't believe. We could get into that a lot. But we see here in Daniel 10:13, Bronson, would you read this for us? We see a couple of these 70 sons of God, these lowercase g gods, here mentioned in Daniel 10:13.
Yes, this is the after that Awesome was just talking about. This is the wait portion of prayer, the wait portion of salvation. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me for 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. And we're going to kind of skim through this next little portion. But now,
would you like to mention who he's talking to? Who's talking here?
Yes, this is Mr. Gabriel. He comes down here and he's talking to Daniel here. And so Daniel sets up his prayer. Gabriel is on his way. And it's just like you or I or anybody else. We make a prayer and, we put our whole heart, being, strength, everything into it. And sometimes you don't see nothing right off the bat. Perhaps you've seen something like this where the prince of Persia withstood Gabriel for 21 days. That's 3 weeks. But lo, Michael, one of, just want to point that out to my Jehovah's Witness buddies out there, one of the chief princes came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make you understand, and I'm going to come down just a little bit where we can get into our next little section here. Here we go. And he said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto you, be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken to me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Here we go. Daniel 10:20. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I am come unto you? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth, the prince of Grecia shall come. Now, this is in direct correlation between the order of empires that we see on our own human, historical, physical realm. Is that you had Babylon, Medo-Persia, Grecia. This is the order. And yet, for some odd reason, this is not happening on earth. This is happening where they're fighting in the realm of prayer, man, that he's fighting with the prince of Persia. And after Persia comes Grecia.
Greece, right. So let's break this down a little bit. Now, in the more spiritual and the esoteric world, they always talk about as above, so below. But that is rooted in truth, because he's fighting with these princes, and then afterwards, and where Daniel is he's in Babylon, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have that Babylon, then you have Persia, then you have Greece. So it's very interesting that that order is the exact order in which the empires came. Is where Daniel is in Babylon, then to Persia, and then to Greece. But you see these princes, and it's not earthly princes, okay? These are some of those 70 that God was chastening in Psalms that were set over these nations after the Tower of Babel. Is you have these princes that were set up, and these are the same ones that over in Psalms we're reading that he was judging them in their council, judging them and saying that no, I'm going to rule over all the nations. You guys have done terrible. You've led them into death and destruction and wickedness. I'm going to be over the nations.
Yes. I think we can take this as far as you want to, but I'm just going to throw this out there that I think this is just a really, really neat thought. You have what we saw in Jasher, where God says, let us go down. We saw that Genesis, Jasher, and Jubilee. But in Jasher in particular, he takes the 70 angels that are near him and they go down. And you spoke tonight already about how the dark side perverts, twists, and contorts the way of God. Well, they descend down on Mount Hermon, right? And he's got his 70 bad guys with him too, his 70 that he puts over these geographical locations. It makes me wonder, and I'm going to put emphasis on that word, wonder, if perhaps this is happening every single day, that we have one of God's 70 and one of the dark side 70 battling over the right for a geographical area.
I don't know that I agree with that too much. I believe that these 70 are the same 70.
Okay, got you.
I believe that it's the same 70. I think that he put this council over top and he delegated it out to these 70, and I believe that they became corrupted.
Very nice. Very, very nice. I just wanted to have that discussion to see, when you have Persia here, he's not fighting a holy prince of Persia, right? The rightful prince of Persia. He's fighting Michael. He's fighting Gabriel. These people that are not necessarily associated with geography, but more or less associated to be throne room entities, people that sit very, very close to the Most High. So I'm glad you were able to talk to that for just.
I know a lot of people believe that that Michael is over Jerusalem and over that area.
Mhm.
I know that's been talked about, and that's not here or there, but I did just want to show the precedence for who that us is in Genesis, and what it says in Jasher, and then how it relates to other parts of the Bible.
Thank you very much. We had one more scripture here that we're coming from Joshua. This is 22, verse 22. This reads, "The Lord God of gods, the Lord God of gods, he knoweth, and Israel he shall know, if it be in rebellion or if in transgression against the Lord." And you see this is all over the Bible. We just chose this one because it repeats itself, which is great. But we know that he is the King of kings, the God of gods, the Lord of lords.
Right.
I thought this was a great verse to use, and you put this out there, and I'm glad that you did, and we put it in the show.
Just more emphasis that, I know like in Sunday school and everything, he's the only God. He's the only God. Well, he is the Most High God, but he is the God of all these other nations call gods, and they know he's real. They know he's real. Even if you look in some of the cylinders that Nebuchadnezzar wrote, you all praise to the Most High God, the God of the heavens, the creator. He says things like that. Even the pagans understood that the ones that were honest, at least, understood that the ones that they were worshiping were subservient and underneath the power of the Most High God of the heaven. So just wanted to point that out there, that no, there is biblical precedence for what we're saying in several portions of the Bible.
All over the place, man. In Isaiah, you see, we've had many lords and gods over us, O Father. This is Isaiah talking. We've had lots of gods. You see in Paul, where he says, there are many lords and many gods, but unto us there is but one. And so it's all,
when we worship the Most High God, we don't deal with those at all.
Exactly.
We don't pray to saints. We don't pray to angels. We don't pray to anything but the Godhead. And that's what we're supposed to do. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into some of these clips. I know that we've talked and got a little long-winded on some things, but just to show, let's get back to the Tower of Babel. And these first clips we're going to show comes from a guy named Derek Gilbert. Some of his stuff I really like. Some of his stuff I completely disagree with. He's much more of a Zionist than I am. So I will say that if you look at some of his Twitter things, I don't really agree with a lot of the stuff he says, but he does do good research. I think he is a man of God. I just think that he's thinks more in the old way, and the way that we've been shown with some things that I don't believe is quite correct, and that we've been misled on. But that's neither here or there. I believe his whole generation is basically like that, but we'll just leave that there. But he does do some good research, and this is his take on where the Tower of Babel is, and it ties a little bit in with Sumerian also. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Fantastic, man. You just holler when you're ready for me to pause.
Okay.
Babel. The clue to the sin of Babel is in the name. Babel is from the Hebrew word that means confusion. But the Hebrew prophets loved to play with language. They would take the words of something and then find another word that sounded kind of like the original word but meant what they really wanted it to mean. So the Akkadian words, Bab Elu, mean gate of the gods. Gate of the gods. But the Hebrews said, no. Language was confused. Babel. Let's call it that. Now, there's an important thing I have to point out, and if nothing else, I hope you remember this tonight. Well, I hope you remember all this stuff. But anyway, this is, I think, a really important point. Babel, in spite of what we've been taught, was not at Babylon. It was not at Babylon. Babylon didn't exist when the Tower of Babel was built. Nimrod was the builder of the tower. We learn this from Josephus, from other ancient traditions. The best guess is that Nimrod lived somewhere between 3,500 and 3,000 BC. That's a rough guess, don't know for sure, but somewhere in that time frame. Genesis 10:10 tells us that the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel, of course, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. Now, Erech is the ancient city of Uruk, where Gilgamesh was king. Gilgamesh was 2 generations later than Nimrod. Nimrod might have been Gilgamesh's grandfather, for all we know. The land of Shinar, Sumer, He was so important, and his kingdom, Nimrod and his kingdom based in Uruk, were so important that we still call that land by that name today. We call it Iraq. Same place, 5,000 years later. That's how significant Nimrod was. And it wasn't because he thought he could build a tower tall enough to literally reach heaven. Scholars have learned in recent years that the name Babylon was actually interchangeable with the names of other cities in ancient Sumer. But here's, I think, the significant point. One of the city names that was interchanged with Babylon regularly was a city called Eridu, E-R-I-D-U. The Sumerians believed that Eridu was the very first city ever built. It was so important in their history that 2,500 years later, during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the kings of Babylon still sometimes called themselves Lugal Nun Ki, which means king of Eridu.
All right, right there, sir.
So what was the deal?
All right. So, and this Eridu also in the Sumerian, this is where it said that the kingship first descended from heaven to earth was there at Eridu. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and play that next clip. This is still Derek Gilbert, but it's just going to kind of finish this thought out and talk a little bit about what was at Eridu. So let's go ahead and continue with this, sir.
Back to the Eabzu. Archaeologists digging up this temple, and this is an artist's recreation of what he thinks it looks like. They found 18 different construction layers at this temple, at the city of Eridu. Some of them are below an 8-foot thick layer of silt. What deposits 8 feet of silt? A big honkin' flood. Exactly. The most impressive layer of construction on this temple, they call Temple 1, was a massive structure. It was a huge temple on a platform with an even larger foundation around it that raised up to the level of the temple itself. But here is the thing. In the middle of constructing what would have looked like this, it was abandoned. At the peak of their architectural achievement, possibly the peak of architectural achievement of the ancient world, 1,000 years before the Egyptians were building their pyramids, they were working on this, and all of a sudden, they stopped. Fuad Safar, who was head of the Iraqi Directorate General of Antiquities, when this site was excavated back in the 1940s, wrote, "The Uruk period, that is the period of Nimrod, and the period of the Tower of Babel, appears to have been brought to a conclusion by no less an event than the total abandonment of the site. In what appears to be an incredibly short time, drifting sand filled the deserted buildings of the temple complex and obliterated all traces of the prosperous little community."
All right, that's good there, brother.
All right. He's well spoken, man.
Well, you see there, his take on it, it was not about height. Now we have some descending takes on that, but let's pull up this Eridu on the map.
Happy to.
There we go. Here is the site that they say is ancient Eridu. Now this, according to the Sumerian.
Let me back out of that. I may have broken you up just a little bit.
A little bit. Take a look at this. This is a very interesting area here. I mean, look at that.
Yes, it sure is. You broke up for just a little second there. I heard you say Eridu. We lost you for maybe about 5 seconds, just to let you know, okay?
Well, this is the site where the Sumerians claimed that the kingship first descended from heaven to earth. And you can see that when you look at the king's list and get into that literature. But right here is where Eridu would be. Let's back out a little bit and just show it, because right here it just kind of looks like a bunch of sand. But let's look at where that's at. Okay. So Eridu would be right there.
Right where my cursor is on the screen. I'll continue to back out. Where that cursor is on the screen is where we were, Eridu.
Right. Okay. So you see that there. So that would be between ancient Babylon and Asher, just like it said in Jubilees, I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we zoom in a little bit there, we can see a little bit of the ruins, and we can kind of check out some of those pictures if you want. But right there is where he is saying that the Tower of Babel was built.
Yes.
It's right here in this location.
Just a bold figure that just sticks out. Square compass comes to mind.
Right.
Very, very, very neat here.
It's like circular looking land work there. So that's where he says it was. And he says it was not about height. I believe that he believes it was some sort of a ritual site that was meant to open doorways, like the gate of the gods, and to let them come in from the spiritual, which I understand that. And I used to believe that. And it may be true. Like I said, it may be true. But there's other lines of thought on this that it was about height. Now, let's go to this next clip. This next clip is from Rob Skiba, and we use Rob quite a bit because he gets into all the same type of stuff that we get into. And let's see what he has to say about this area.
Sure thing.
You can understand why God did what he did. Now, part of what they intended to do was kill God, which I don't believe is possible. It's not possible to kill God. But the other things that they intended to do, his statement right there seems to imply that it was at least theoretically possible for them to do so. Now, if you've listened to any of my previous teachings prior to about 2.5 years ago, regarding the Tower of Babel, I always said it was not about height, right? I said, if it was really about height, if you're trying to build a tall tower to get into, and, start on a mountain or something, you don't build it in the plains. I mean, that'd be stupid, right? So therefore, it must be a Stargate. Right? They're trying to rend the veil, they're creating a Stargate so they can go from this realm and go through the Stargate and get into heaven. And there are a lot of people out there still teaching that. I taught it and was pretty passionate about it. And then it's just like this, walking in Torah. Before we should have BT before Christ, but before Torah, BT, right? In my BT life, there's so many things that we read right past, read right over. I even underlined and annotated stuff and didn't get it. And then, after Torah, I look at it and go, wow, how did I miss that? Well, I mean, it's the same thing with some of this other stuff that I'm looking at here. And I've even published the book. I got Jubilees back there and some of these other ones. And I look in these things for more detail about, there's so many things that we read right past, read right over. I even underlined and annotated stuff and didn't get it. And then, after Torah, I look at it and go, wow, how did I miss that? Well, I mean, it's the same thing with some of this other stuff that I'm looking at here. And I've even published the book. I got Jubilees back there and some of these other ones. And I look in these things for more detail about the Tower of Babel and see things like this. And they built it 43 years they were building it. And it also says there's about 600,000 men at the time. So there's a pretty decent population. Its breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of a brick was 1/3 of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 cubits and 2 palms. The extent of one wall was 13 stades, and of the other 30 in Jubilees 10:21. Note, 5,433 cubits equals 8,150 feet.
Whoa.
All right, let's pause it there, sir.
Another guy I stumbled across.
That's a big building.
And we'll show this height of this building, this tower, next to some massive buildings today. So let's check this out. So 8,150 feet, the Tower of Babel. The Burj Khalifa is 2,722 feet. Shanghai Tower, 2,073 feet. One World Trade Center is 1,792 feet. And the Sears Tower is 1,729 feet tall. So look at all those buildings that are massive buildings in comparison to the Tower of Babel. Now, I'm a big timeline and visual guy. So seeing this, these buildings that are just massive, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai is huge, guys. It's absolutely the tallest building, by almost 700 feet of what we have today. And in comparison to the Tower of Babel, it's, a little over 1/4 of the size of this tower that was built in the ancient world, okay? So just to give a good visualization of what this is, that's pretty powerful. You realize exactly, if that was the measurements of it, and that's what it's, then I don't know if I'm going to agree with Derek Gilbert. Now, they may have not been able to enter into heaven from this height, but they were building it to this height for a reason.
Yes. I think I lost you again just for a little bit there. I'm going to hold up and see if you can come back. If we continue to lose you, I'll just come on over here to Mr. Skiba and just let this roll until you come back, okay?
Across his research, Alfred Edersheim wrote a book, Bible History, Old Testament, chapter 8. He says, of the magnificence of Babel, the capital of the empire of Nimrod, the mighty hunter, it is difficult to convey an adequate conception without entering into details foreign to our purpose. But some idea of it may be formed from its extent, which according to the lowest computation covered no less than 100 square miles. We're talking the base of the tower.
Wow.
While
he says the highest, what did he say, 400 square miles for the base? That's just bananas, man.
highest computation would make it over 200 square miles. Well, now all of a sudden I'm going, well, no wonder they built it in the plains of Shinar. They needed a big enough space to build a base for a building that big. That's one huge structure. Jasher even goes so far to tell you that it took a year to get to the top of the thing. And they were building brick, making the bricks and stuff like that. And if a brick fell, man, everybody was upset. They would mourn the brick. But if a dude a guy fell down, nobody cared. Because it was a big labor that they were going through there. And it says in the Jasher account, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. Goes into greater detail and says all these people and all their families divided themselves into three parts. The first said, we will ascend and fight against him. The second said, we will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them. And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears. And God knew their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And then it goes on to say how he was upset about it and confounds their language. So their plan was, they had three camps to get in there and take out the angels, take out the throne room, get rid of God and set up their own gods, and presumably Nimrod to be king of the everything. So we pick up in Genesis, right? He confounds the languages. Now, if you look through lots of ancient Hebrew literature, you'll see that they believe that there were 70 different languages that came out of the Tower of Babel, 70 different nations. I believe Hebrew was the original language, the language of God, and I believe through Abraham, the language of Hebrew was retained. And then you got 69 other people groups speaking 69 other languages. And in the cosmic chess match scenario, I see sort of like this vision of God saying to Satan, okay, you want to take me on? Fine. I'll give you 69. I'll take one. Give it your best shot. And then you have all these people going off with different languages, 69 different languages, talking about the same guy who was their former leader. But now his character becomes known by a number of different names through different cultures.
All right, there's good, sir. Sorry, I think you guys lost me for a little bit.
Just for a second there. You came back relatively quickly. It's just I just wanted to go ahead and put the video up.
We've had so much trouble just trying to bring this episode to you guys. Now we have so we've had a couple different opinions on whether it was about height or whether it was not about height. Okay, another opinion that Derek Gilbert had was that it was in Eridu. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then we also saw that in Jubilees, it said the tower was between Asher and Babylon. So we saw in the Derek Gilbert video that Babylon didn't exist at this time. So it seems that the writer of Jubilees was giving you a reference that they would have understood in their time. Okay, that it was between Babylon and Asher. So it was not actually in Babylon, but it was giving you the area, to where it was at in the time of the writing of Jubilees. Okay. Now, there is other opinions on this, because if you look into it, and it's easily found that the ancient name for Cairo, Egypt, was actually Babylon. So we're going to play a clip here of somebody who proposes that the tower was in Cairo, Egypt, and not in the Mesopotamian area. So let's go ahead and check this out and give him a listen.
Let's do it.
This may be the actual location of the Tower of Babel of Babylon.
The original name of Egypt, that area, was not Cairo. It was Babylon. I found a map on the wall in Galileo Museum, and it's called the Fra Mauro map, and it shows the world in 1457. When you look at the area around Egypt, it doesn't mention the name Nile River on the Nile River. The name it gives to the Nile River is Gihon, because in the Bible, the place of the Garden of Eden is where the four rivers meet. The four rivers were purportedly the Tigris, Euphrates, the Pishon, and the Gihon rivers. The scholar Josephus said that the Gihon River was the Nile. Nimrod is famous in the Bible for building the Tower of Babel. Now, the Tower of Babel was supposed to have been built on the shores of the river Gihon. Now, we today believe that Babylon was located in what we would consider, Mesopotamia. Archaeologists never found the city, and there's great debate on where Babylon actually was. Well, the funny part is that when you look at Leonardo da Vinci's letter to the Devatdar of the Sultan of Cairo, it actually says to the Devatdar of the Sultan of Babylon, Cairo, because this whole area is Old Cairo, and the name of Old Cairo was Babylon. I had very recent discoveries related to this, and I believe that the Tower of Babel plateau was actually in Egypt, and it's actually a place called Abu Rawash. It stands 300 feet higher elevation than the Giza Plateau. The builder of it, Nimrod, interestingly, God wasn't happy, apparently, as the story goes, and destroyed the building. This is exactly northwest of the Great Pyramid Complex, and there were two pyramids there. The first pyramid is the larger of the two, and it has a 60-degree slope angle. Now, these pyramids were destroyed. Nobody knows how they were destroyed. There's about 20 concourses still there, and there's a gigantic deep cavern or pit. It looks as though the pyramid exploded from the inside out.
Wow. Now that is a hot take.
It is a hot take, but he's absolutely correct about Cairo being called Babylon in the old days. Just like we saw in that Derek Gilbert video, that Babylon changed locations. That name changed locations. Eridu was once known as Babylon. What we know as Babylon today was Babylon. And Cairo was also known as Babylon, which is very interesting. I wonder why they kept switching the location and the name of it. And then you see in Revelation, Mystery Babylon. It was a great city. It's a new Babylon. It's one that's not known of yet, which is very interesting. It seems that there's a power that moves from geographic location to a different geographic location, but it seems to be the same type of worship, the same type of system, almost like a one world government system that moves from place to place to place. Right. So I lay that in your hands. You can find that tower or that complex that he was talking about at Al-Rasha. You can find that on the map. You can go and look at the pictures of it. I don't believe that the tower was built there. I believe that it was probably somewhere between Asher and Babylon, like it says in Jubilees. But this is a very interesting path, and I invite all of you guys to go down there and look and check and see what's going on there. But there's something going on with Cairo. We haven't been told the truth about the history of Egypt either, just like everywhere else. It's shrouded in mystery, but it definitely was. And I would be interested to see what's going on underneath Cairo and what could be found underneath there. I bet there's all kinds of things that would bring a lot of light to what's going on in history. And that archaeology in Egypt is held by an iron fist by their director of antiquities. Was it Zawi Hawass or whatever his name is? That guy, when he passes away, I have a feeling we're going to find a lot of stuff under that Sphinx. We're going to find a lot of stuff in that labyrinth. We're going to find a whole lot of stuff if we can ever get that. whole lot of stuff. Now, this next thing we're going to look at is an academic paper. Get rid of some of it. Maybe we can run a little smoother.
That's my hope, is I can take a little bit of stress off of things is all. But
Yeah.
there we go.
That should be good there, brother.
I think so too.
All right. So, in this, now, a newer idea is this, okay? And we seem to be always coming back to Turkey or Turkey A. It seems that we just keep coming back here. And now what this paper says is they think it was in northeast Syria or southeast Turkey. And I've seen a study recently that took all the languages and where they dispersed from is from in southeast Turkey. So I think that gives this a little bit of validity. Also, that's where Mount Ararat is, where the ark landed. So Bronson, if you would like to read through this just a little bit, and this first paragraph here, and it'll give kind of the idea, and then we could zoom in and show that URL so other people can go and check behind us. This is a very, very long and in-depth paper, and we've already ran for looks a little over 2.5 hours. So let's go through this lightly and just read this first paragraph, and then we can show the URL and just kind of lay that in you guys' hands to check this out, because this is a definite possibility.
For sure.
Okay? Because also in Jubilees, it says when they left Ararat, they went east. Okay, now, granted, Mesopotamia is east, but it's very south. Now, this would be more in line with just that straight east direction that is mentioned in Jubilees there. Now, it also says it's between Asher and Babylon, but we see how places have moved and everything else. Heck, Babylon was also Cairo, Egypt, okay? So let's keep that in mind. But let's read a little bit of what they're talking about here.
Absolutely. The Bible, or the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, is believed by many to be the record of a real historical event that took place after the worldwide flood. At a time when the Earth's population still lived together in one place, the enduring archaeological question, therefore, is where the Tower of Babel was built. It is widely considered that Shinar, where the Bible says the Babel event took place, was a territory in South Mesopotamia, and that Babel was located at Babylon. However, an analysis of history, geography, and geology shows that Shinar cannot have been in the south, but rather was a territory in what is northeastern Syria today, and that the remnants of the tower must be located in the upper Kabor River Triangle, not far from Tobrak, which is the missing city of Akkad. That is amazing, man. It's Austin and I, when preparing for this video, went through many different theories here. We tried to test all these guys out, and we spent lots of time on Google Earth, and we searched for just about anything you could think of: circular, round, triangle, square, rectangular, anything we could find for some type of. We tried slanting and checking elevation and topography, anything we could find to indicate some type of tower in all of these places. And unfortunately, that was not easy to do. There was just no real, what do you call it? The smoking gun. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Let's scroll down just a little bit here, and let me see if there's anything else I want to point out. We're not going to read all this to you guys. Like I said, we're about over 2.5 hours in here, and let's see. We're about to go blow up a bunch of stuff and shoot a bunch of guns and do all this type of stuff for 4th of July. So, if you're not in America, that's what we do, baby.
That's right.
Shinar, yeah.
It does a really good job here, and like you said, it is a very lengthy article, but they cover their dots and what do you call it? Dot your I's and cross your T's. And
yeah.
They go into how they break down this word Shinar and explain their language, and they do a really good job here, man.
Can we show that URL? Is there any way we could zoom in a little bit on that URL or no?
Yes, I will do my best here, but what I can certainly do is I can type it out, because once this video goes up, usually these tabs and URL up here is unseen, so that I can make a picture bigger, but I will certainly type it out for the audience if that.
Yeah, at that point, yeah, let's definitely do and leave that for them so these guys can see it. Because it's this is a very in-depth paper and extremely long.
There's that there for you. I tried to space it out to where you could read that easily enough. And I'll tell you what I can also do. Make that sucker bigger.
There we go. So
Yeah.
there you go. It's the answersresearchjournal.org/where-is-the Tower of Babel / All right. So guys, you can go and check behind us and look for yourself and do your own research, which we always encourage you to do. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Bronson. Don't listen to anybody. Nobody. Go and look for yourself. Find it out for yourself, because honestly, anybody can tell you anything. The best thing to do is just go and search it out for yourself. Now, we have one last thing to show here, and this is from what we call the other side of things, and they even have this story too. Would you like to talk about where this was found? This was found in Nineveh, and the same guy that translated the Epic of Gilgamesh is the one that found this in Nineveh. And this talks a little bit, well, not a little bit, this talks exactly of what happened in the Bible, just from the other perspective, the polytheist perspective.
Exactly right. And it reads very similar to, I'm assuming if you've made it this far, you're not the 50-minute crowd, you're the 50-year crowd. So I'm going to speak to that crowd.
Right.
This reads very similar to something like the Gospel of Judas, where so many bits and pieces are just sort of missing. And so you kind of have to use context clues in your imagination to some degree to kind of fill in the blanks. So Smith was fortunate in that the excavation did yield additional tablets from the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal. And upon further research, he did actually discover a story likely to have inspired, that's where we disagree, likely to have inspired the biblical account of the Tower of Babel, cataloged and hidden in the inventory vaults of the British Museum. The fragmentary piece of text reads as follows. This is going to sound very broken. I'd highly recommend turning on your phone screen and reading this, otherwise I'm going to sound very silly. Them, ? The father of him, his heart was evil. Against the father of all the gods was wicked. Of him, his heart was evil. Babylon brought to subjection, and great he confounded their speech. Babylon brought to subjection, and great he confounded their speech. Their strong place, tower, all the day they founded. To their strong place in the night, entirely he made an end. In his anger also, word thus he poured out. To scatter abroad he set his face. He gave this, ? Command. Their counsel was confused. The course he broke, fixed the sanctuary. So it is very, very, very broken up and a little bit on the harder side to understand. But perhaps you are getting, this was found in Nineveh, you know what I'm saying? And so that would be, if I'm not mistaken, in between Asher and Babylon, right? Or am I crazy?
I believe so. Either that or a little north of Asher. I'm thinking about that ancient map, but I think it's gone now. That was found in Nineveh, and which was the city that Asher had actually built. When we looked at back in Genesis 10, the Asher went out and built that city, most likely under the command of Nimrod himself, because it's right there in that Nimrod passage. And we talked about that in the Nimrod video. Definitely go check that out if you haven't, guys. That's a good video. A lot of the things we're talking about tonight are also in that Nimrod video. We just go a little more in depth on this tower here. So, let's go ahead and close the screen share out. And so, Bronson, what is your opinion on where the Tower of Babel was? Was it about height, or was it more or less just a ritual site to open up, for lack of a better term, a stargate or a portal for these entities to come through?
I think I'm going to take maybe you would call it the coward's way out. I'm going to say maybe it's a little bit of both. Because here's my thought, all right? We talked a little bit of windows of heaven and such, but there are certain places that we just cannot go without the help of others or without the help of technology. You and I can go underwater, but we can only go so deep before our bodies, you know what I'm saying? That was probably really loud in the microphone, sorry. We can only go so deep before we go kersplat. And
I think we all saw that with that submarine.
yes, exactly right. And so my thought is once you get up above that firmament, you're no longer on earth anymore. You know what I'm saying? You've gone through second heaven. You're making your way up above the waters that separate the waters. I don't think that and I could be wrong, but I don't think that I can just take a hammer and chisel and knock through that firmament. I think we had to get some height to maybe get to where a window was, and that window might not be like the window you see right here in my room. It might be something different. And I'll go crazy for just
like
a second.
Portal or something.
Yeah, sort of like the whirlwind we see Elijah being taken up in, or the whirlwind you see James after the Ethiopian being taken up in. And again, I could be wrong on that, but I think maybe some height had to be used to reach the portal. But all I have for that is just what we've done tonight and my own personal speculation. So I really have no smoking gun.
I'm with you too. I believe it's a combination of things. I believe that they had to get to a certain point of height, or they wouldn't have built it 8,000 feet. I don't think they would have used the resources and the manpower to build to that height for no reason.
Right.
But there would have had to be something else going on, and I wonder if there wasn't some of that the teachings of the Watchers that Canaan found that were utilized in this building, and why they built it in that certain location. Granted, they needed like Skiba said, a plane to be able to build up to that height, so they needed the height. They wouldn't have built it that tall for no reason. Okay. Now, could it have been in Eridu? Sure, I think that's a good spot. Could it have been in southeastern Turkey? Could have been. It could have been. I believe it's like Jubilee says, though. If I'm going to give it a location, I believe it is somewhere between what we would know as Babylon and Asher, somewhere there, and that they picked that spot and built up to that height for a reason. So I believe it was about height. But I believe that there was some kind of ritual or some kind of technique that they were using to open up and make this the gate of the gods, to where the gods could come into the physical plane, these lower G gods, these powers that are in the second heaven that we talk about a lot. And please go back and watch that Genesis 1 video. We go into this pretty in depth. So I believe it. You said it's the coward's way, but I believe if we're taking all the research and all the history and the locations and everything, I think it's a combination of all those things. I think they're using, masonry technology to get, to build the building, and then they're using some kind of ritual or some kind of, it may have just been some kind of technology to be able to rip this veil. And if you guys haven't watched our Ether in the Old World video, please go watch that. I think that clip we showed with the airplane, and if you guys haven't watched it, it is worth watching just for that clip. Okay. That blew my mind, and it opened up, my mind to what this could have been as well. That they were able to basically rip the veil of reality. And it shows that in that video, and please go watch it. I invite you all to go watch that Aether video. Check that out. So I think it's probably a combination of some kind of ritual with technology in conjunction with the height of that building, that they were going to be able to ascend to a certain point. And it says that, what they imagined to do, they would have been able to do, is what it says in the Bible. So whatever they were trying to do with that, they were going to accomplish it.
Right. As for location, one thing that I know that I do believe is that whatever they're claiming that is on Google Earth, where you just type in Tower of Babel, that ain't it.
Because there's all kinds of structures around it. The bases are bigger than that, and I'm sorry, no,
that ain't it.
No, I'm sorry, man. That was something. It was something in the ancient world, and it was probably a big ziggurat, and it was a good size. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the size that we're talking about here. 200 square mile base. That's not that. There's a we didn't show it tonight, but there's a spiral that goes up that Saddam built, and it's a palace up there, but it also served as a pumping station for like banana farms and stuff. It served a dual purpose, but he built it to resemble the Tower of Babel, and it's right there near where they say that base is of the tower in Babylon, just south of the Ishtar Gate. And what was it, Hillah?
Mm-hmm. And it's like 20 times bigger. It's so much bigger than what.
And what Saddam built was so much bigger. It's like, dude, no, there ain't no way. There's no way, dude. So, hey, guys, that's our Tower of Babel video. I'm sure we'll come back and touch on it some in some other videos and maybe reference some things. And if we come across new information, we'll definitely bring it out to you. But for where I stand right now, I believe that the height did have something to do with it, and that it, in my opinion, it was most likely between Asher and Babylon, somewhere there in Mesopotamia. Maybe not as south as they say it is, but I believe it was somewhere there where Jubilees says it was. Now, could it have been in southeastern Turkey? Sure, there's a lot there, and it seems that all the languages seem like they come back and spread out from there. When you talk about linguistic experts, that's what they all say. So, is it a possibility? Yeah, but where I stand right now is I believe it's between Asher and Babylon there in Mesopotamia in modern day Iraq, and that it was about height, and that they also, in conjunction with that, were having to do some kind of ritual to call down these spirits or to somehow break through this veil. And if you want to see a physical representation of breaking through the veil, go back to our Aether in the Old World video. It's not a very popular video, but there's some good stuff in there. But if you don't watch anything out of that video, scroll till you see video clips of an airplane. Okay, I promise you, you'll be happy you did. It's far out there, guys. So go check that out, and that kind of ties into what we're talking about of what they could have been doing at the top of this tower to rip that veil and have these spiritual entities come down. Bronson, do you have anything you want to add before we get out of here tonight?
Not necessarily, man. I think you did a fantastic job. To our viewing audience, thank you very much. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us over the holiday weekend. This has been a really, really good time going through Genesis 10, now up into 11. And we were finally about to start getting into some of the more not so fantastical type of things. We're going to start getting into Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And I honestly, man, I'm really, really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great, great time. As for the comments, I'm ready to see some comments. Give us your hot takes on the Tower of Babel, man. I've actually learned and seen some things in the comments, and I've seen some things that I don't much agree with either. But I found some things that you guys have put in there that have actually taken me aback, and I'm like, wow, no, that's a really neat way to connect two dots. I've never seen that before. And so I really, really appreciate it. I know Austin does too. Yeah. So if you made it this far, chances are you are a fan, and we appreciate you. Shout out to you guys. And we really, really appreciate that. We've seen all the comments about some of the individuals binge watching our stuff, and that's really, really cool, man. That means a lot to us.
We do the same thing. We find a channel that seems like has some good information. We blow through it, playlist after playlist after playlist. We're information junkies. I know, we dive on into it and everything else. So if you guys have some information on the Tower of Babel, maybe a little bit more information, because I couldn't find anything really good about possibly a location for the Tower of Babel in Southeast Turkey. Anything like that, dude, we'd really, really appreciate it if you shared it with us, because we could not find it. And we spent hours on Google Earth trying to find possible locations and earthworks and going over mounds and could this be here and where did all these Babylons, what else was named Babylon? We went through it all, guys, and we just brought you the best information that we could possibly find, and we have had a lot of technical difficulties. So this has been really tough to get to you guys, but hopefully you enjoyed it, and we do appreciate you guys coming and watching the videos, subscribing. Please share it out to anybody you know that would be interested in this type of stuff. We love history, we love archaeology, architecture, and most of all, we love God, and we love getting into the Word and really digging in and trying to understand exactly what has happened in our history. Because good God, it is so convoluted. But yeah, that's our best shot at giving you the exact location and exactly what they were doing that we could find anywhere. To be honest with you, everybody has an opinion. but nobody seems to bring all the opinions together and to bring it to you and let you guys decide. So you know where we stand on it and what we think is right now. So let us know where you stand on it, what you think about it. And yeah, and any information you guys have on it, please share it with us. We were digging and digging and digging, and this is the best that we could get to you guys. So we love all you guys on the other side of the screen, and we'll see you next time on Ancient Echoes, guys.